guys, welcome back to another episode of Adnan in Japan. So today I'm very happy that I'm in Yamanakako, so Lake Yamanakako, and as you can see the weather is really nice, and what that also means is that we have a fairly good view of Mount Fuji. Ta-da! Yep. So I'm just sunbathing here, and it's really a good feeling that spring is here. So for now, at this time, we are still in the sakura season for the area around Mount Fuji. So on the way here, maybe you'll be able to see some of my video that showcase the sakura. So it's really a wonderful feeling to be in Japan in spring with the sakura season. So my original purpose here was to try to catch the Shiba Sakura, but I think it's still a little bit early. So I think they will go into full bloom perhaps next week or 2 weeks later. So I decided to just camp out at Yamanakako to enjoy the sun, to enjoy the view of Mount Fuji. So what are we going to talk about today? So today we are mainly going to be focusing on the 3 negative points of riding in Japan, riding a motorcycle in Japan versus riding a motorcycle in Singapore. So starting with the first point, which is for me perhaps the most troublesome one, is that in Japan it is really difficult to find motorcycle parking in the big cities, and if you manage to find it, it's quite expensive. So compared to Singapore, this is a big difference. So in Singapore, you generally can find parking throughout the entire city. You don't have to worry that much. You will be able to find a parking space near to the place that you are going. Whereas in Japan, particularly because I live in Tokyo, it's extremely difficult to find parking areas. So you are usually in the weekends, if you would like to head out to somewhere within Tokyo City itself, you'll be spending a lot of time researching, is there parking, how much is the parking. So it's a big difference from Singapore, and I believe this is one of the negative point about riding motorcycle in Japan. Of course, this mainly only affects if you live in a big city, if you live in a small village, small town outside in the countryside. I think you generally don't have a problem trying to find parking for the motorcycle. So that's the first point. Then moving on to the second point. The second point is there are just way too many traffic lights in the city area. Again, this is going back to the city area compared to Singapore. Yes, it's also very highly urbanized. I used to think that the number of traffic lights in Singapore is just too many. Wait till you see Tokyo. Wait till you see Tokyo, and you will just see there's so many traffic lights, and it makes your travel a little bit frustrating. Furthermore, the roads are so narrow. So in Singapore, and maybe some other countries, but in Singapore what happens is generally you will be able to lane filter. Even though there are many traffic lights, you generally can get through the traffic quite briskly. But in Japan, it's not always the case. The roads can be quite narrow, the roads can be quite small, and as a result you can't really get through the congestion, the traffic, that easily. So I think that's the second point that I see comparing between Japan and Singapore. Now moving on to the third point. So moving on to the last point, the main difference between riding motorcycle in Japan versus Singapore would be, at least in my perspective, would be the toll fees. So the toll fees in Japan is incredibly expensive. So I'm not 100% familiar with the ERP, the toll fees in Singapore when you use the highway, when you get into the city area. But outside of the city area, riding a motorcycle on the highway is free, right? But in Japan, as long as you get onto the expressway, you have to pay something. And so for the national expressways, it's very expensive. If I'm not wrong, the price is around 20 Japanese yen per kilometer for motorcyclists. What does 20 Japanese yen per kilometer mean? So based on the exchange rate that we have today, so 20 Japanese yen would be approximately 18 cents per kilometer. So this is per kilometer. So if you travel 10 kilometers, that's $1.80, right? If you travel 100 kilometers, that's $18. So if you travel approximately 100 kilometers to and from work in Singapore, that's $18 a day on the expressway. So really expensive, and so it's something that, you know, it makes you wonder, why is it so expensive? So a motorcycle will have to pay approximately 80% of the toll fee of a car, and from my perspective, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, because in general, motorcyclists, they don't cause too much congestion, and they usually do not damage the roads as well, because they are very light. So it's, you know, it always makes me wonder, why is the toll fees for motorcycles so expensive? But anyway, I digress. So for the third point, I think using expressway in Japan is really expensive, and it's one of the negative points about riding motorcycle in Japan. So I just mentioned 3 personal views of the differences between riding a motorcycle in Japan and Singapore. But of course, these are just my personal view, and we always have to look at the bright side. So I generally think that riding motorcycle in Japan, you know, the benefits outweighs the negatives. I will try to get some of my personal views on, you know, on the benefits, on the plus points of riding motorcycle in Japan versus Singapore in another video, but today is mainly just focusing on the negative point. All right, so perhaps I'm gonna get a lot of hate, a lot of hate comments about why am I riding motorcycle in Japan if I think it's bad. But I mean, just to let you guys know, this is just my personal view, and I strongly think that riding motorcycle in Japan is much better than Singapore. Alright, so I think that's all for the video today. I will catch up with you guys perhaps in another video in Japan, or perhaps in Singapore. So stay tuned for that. Another video will be coming up soon. See you.